let me remind the member opposite what he used to think about the bill. He used to say a regulator was substantial but necessary. He used to say that without it, the consequences would be catastrophic. And he used to say that without fans, football clubs are nothing. We would all do well to remember that as we work towards reform to secure a brighter future for football. Well, Mr Speaker, they've now worked themselves so far towards reform that they're virtually indistinguishable from the member for Clacton. I can only think that he's writing their policy on football. But seriously, how can he look those football fans in the eye in Hartlepool, Bolton, Portsmouth, Reading, Bury and Luton and defend this after making them a promise just 2 years ago and again at the general election? Look, I've got the full list of what you might as well have it because he's the only person in this room who doesn't seem to remember what he said. Mr Speaker, Madam Deputy Speaker, I am left wondering if either he didn't understand a word of his own bill that he introduced to this place just a few years ago and championed at the general election, or whether the sad truth is that the public cannot trust a single word that his party says. Now, let me try and help him with what the bill actually does. Firstly, this bill introduces a licensing system which requires clubs to have a sensible business plan that it sticks to. That will include a clear financial plan which properly assesses risk measured and proportionate, with requirements and clubs reflecting their circumstances. And let me address the particular concern that he's just discovered that he has. It will take into account factors like league, club size and financial health, which will ensure the regulation is light touch. And we have cemented this proportionate approach that we inherited from the member opposite by adding 2 measures: a financial growth duty, so that the regulator will need to consider financial growth of English football as part of its secondary duties, and a specific... Well, look, he can't have it both ways. He can't take credit for this piece of legislation and then try and vote it down. Honestly, I mean, I've seen quite a lot from the party opposite. I've seen people taking 3 different positions on 2 different options in front of them. What I haven't seen for quite a long time is a shadow minister who's got 2 different positions about his own view. I mean, this is just absurd. And we have also included a specific regulatory principle on the face of the bill that clarifies that the regulatory regime is light touch. This will provide the clarity and certainty that will prevent any unintended consequences of deterring good owners from investing in our clubs. I will in a moment. The Sports Minister and I have worked closely with clubs at every level to produce legislation that is clearer for prospective owners than the system that exists at present. And we are confident that this is the stable environment that will drive more investors with a long-term, prudent approach into the game. I will happily give way.
One of the sticking points, and that has changed in this bill, is the issue of parachute payments. One of the concerns this side of the House has is the fact that it will deter investment, especially when this is the best league in the world. Quite literally, across the world, people invest with that security to know that they can get back there. If you take that away, there is a worry that you'll deter investment into other leagues. This is exactly what the German league are looking for, the French league are looking for, and the Spanish league. How does she rectify that issue by putting it in this bill?
The honourable gentleman raises a decent point, and let me address it head on. We have no plans to abolish parachute payments. There is no measure in this bill that allows us to do so. Neither do we take a view on parachute payments. That is for football itself to determine. But it would be a nonsense to exclude parachute payments from the State of the Game report, given that this is a bill about financial sustainability of the whole game. The regulator has to have the ability to take that into account and to inform discussions with different clubs in every league across the footballing world. That is the view that we took, but that is also far closer to the spirit, intention and recommendations of Dame Tracy Crouch's review of football that was led and informed by thousands of fans across the country, and it is the right thing to do. I will make some progress. There are many members who want to speak today, which I think it really does show how important this is to this House. Secondly, Madam Deputy Speaker, some members in this place raised concerns about competition, and indeed the honourable member opposite raised this earlier. So let me be crystal clear. Football is an economic powerhouse. The Premier League and its clubs contributed more than £4.2 billion in tax in 2021, supported more than 90,000 jobs. England leads the world when it comes to football, and the English pyramid is based on competition. That's why the regulator will not intervene in competition matters. Its scope is tightly defined, and I can say to the House with confidence that it will not risk contravening any international statutes. They will have heard what I said to the honourable member opposite about the view of UEFA, that they will have heard what the FA has confirmed directly to members of both houses. And in fact, Madam Deputy Speaker, we are so committed to this principle to protect England's ability to compete in international matches that we removed a damaging clause that we inherited from the previous government, which required the regulator to have regard to the government's foreign policy and trade considerations when approving takeover. This is a better and far more independent system as a result. I will give way.
I'm really grateful for giving way. On the point of the enormous amount of money that there is, particularly sitting with the Premier League, does she share my concern that the Premier League and the FA in general do not do justice by the families of those footballers who suffer from neurodegenerative conditions? We know that players are 4 or 5 times more likely to have neurodegenerative conditions than the rest of the population. And those organisations, the Premier League and the FA, are meant to support families with the care costs of the needs of those former professionals, and they do not do it. Would she meet with Football Families for Justice so we can do something with this bill that forces the wealthy people in football to support those who suffer?
Can I thank him for his advocacy on this, and also my honourable friend who's done incredible work in this field. I'm due to meet some of the families shortly, and I'm grateful to him for raising it. Madam Deputy Speaker, I'll try and make some progress because I know how many people want to speak, and particularly to raise the situation of their own clubs and communities. On financial distributions, it is our strong preference football is able to reach its own agreement on broadcast revenue distribution, but regretfully, as the House will know, since 2019, when the last deal was struck, no agreement has been reached. That is why we agree with Dame Tracy Crouch that clubs must have a safeguard in these circumstances, and the bill sets out a backstop power. It's been explicitly designed to incentivise industry to come to its own agreement and restored the right of the regulator, to, as we've discussed, to consider all elements of club finances, including parachute payments. Madam Deputy Speaker, by definition, a backstop is a measure of last resort. As such, we've strengthened the measures in the bill to ensure the regulator will only have the power to intervene as a last resort. We've also been clear that the regulator will need to publish its State of the Game report before the backstop can be triggered, so all parties have a clear and common understanding view of the problems which should be addressed before engaging in mediation. And finally, I recognise that the exact process of how the backstop should work has been a matter of serious and considered debate in the other place, with thoughtful suggestions given by Lords Burt, Pannick and others. We are confident that we have proposed an effective mechanism, but we appreciate the constructive and thoughtful debate on this matter. And ahead of this bill's committee stage, we will consider if there are sensible ways to improve the process and ensure we present the best possible option to the House. I will.
Thank my right friend for giving way. Can we just come back to the position of the party opposite on parachute payments? I've got to say how much I welcome the fact that the government now has not ruled out taking parachute payments into account when the regulator does his work. Because what the party opposite is saying is there's going to be a State of the Game report, and the whole purpose is surely to look at the health of the football pyramid as a whole. And before that report takes place, the opposition now want to rule out the regulator being allowed to take account of parachute payments. That is a nonsense, when 80% of the help the Premier League give to the rest of the league is now going in parachute payments. That's a nonsense. At least it ought to be considered for the future.
Can I thank him for his intervention and very much support what he says. Finally, fourthly, Madam Deputy Speaker, let me touch on owners and directors tests. Football clubs are the pride of our towns and cities. New owners bring important investment, but they're also the guardians, the custodians of clubs that have stood at the centre of our communities and our lives for over 100 years. Fans grow up attending matches with parents and grandparents, only to later take their own children and grandchildren in turn. These are clubs that are handed on from one generation to the next. Institutions that, as the member for South Herefordshire once wrote, help to shape and define us as we help to shape and define them. They are too important to be used as playthings by people who have no stake or care for the community that owns them. That is why the bill introduces a fitness test for owners and directors, a source of wealth test for owners, and a requirement for adequate financial plans and resources also for owners only. Prospective owners and directors will have to pass these tests before buying or joining a club. Incumbents will not be automatically tested, but the power exists if there is concern about their suitability to remove them if found unsuitable. This